Hey everybody, my name is Ken Kunum, owner of North Star Technology Group. Today I have with me Steven Zetzer. Many of you guys already know Steven as part of our team. He's one of our senior network project leaders. And today we are going to talk a little bit about cybersecurity controls, kind of what's going on a little bit in our industry, how the threat landscape continues to evolve and how North Star is responding to that. One of the things that we are always trying to do is evaluate current threats to our customers, to the environment, and respond with certain controls and tools to battle that. Today, we're going to talk about some of those things. Stephen will talk a little bit here in a bit about some of the features, but many of these tools that we will be talking about, you'll start to see show up. Either they may be on your bill, they will be in your environments, and we want to talk about why we feel that those things are important. So maybe, Steve, we start out with WebRoot DNS filtering. What do you think the people need to know about that?
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Thanks for having me today, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for WebRoot DNS filtering, again, we've identified some tools that we feel are vital for your cybersecurity. So we are automatically deploying these tools to your environment if we feel they're needed. And WebRoot DNS filtering is one of those through technology, in that it's so simple yet so afraid. So every time you go to a website in your computer and you type in your address of your website, so let's say you go to denverpost.com, right? When you type in denverpost.com, your computer has to look up a number that goes with that number. It is also going to give out the number for upload stolen credit card data.ru, right? So if your computer gets some type of malware and requests to connect to a site that has ransomware or something like that, the internet directory, the default directories will give you that information. But when you have a secure internet directory DNS server like WebRoot DNS filtering, it's going to recognize that you've asked for the number for a malicious site, and it's not going to give it to you. And so it's in its simplicity, right? It prevents you from ever connecting to the site where you're going to download the malware. So super simple, super effective, and yeah, and we're using it. So that's WebRoot DNS.
Yeah, no, thanks, Steve. I think that's helpful. I think the next one looks like we are including now is VSA ransomware protection as part of the tools that we use for managing and monitoring patches and deploying software and many other features, including monitoring and alerting. But VSA ransomware protection is an add-on to that, right, Steve?
Right. So with the VSA anti-ransomware, again, it's another one of those very simple tools, and it has I would classify it as like guardrails, right? So you're going down the highway, computing high speed. Hopefully your internet connection is high speed, and your video and your audio stays good on your meetings. But as you're going down the highway, you've got these guardrails on the side. And if there is some ransomware that is starting up or taking root, the VSA anti-ransomware is a good first line of defense, in that it's going to prevent that software from executing on your computer. And so it's just another tool that we've got. And if we've got one that can catch it, that's simple like this, we feel it's necessary.
Yep, no, that's fantastic. Next on the list is a password manager. Can you explain what the value of password managers are and why our customers would get value from that?
So the traditional username and password combination is, everyone's overloaded, right? In order for the average business person to get through their day, you literally have to deal with 50 to 100 passwords, username and password combinations in a day. Most users, for their strategy to deal with this overload, is to use the same username and password. Obviously not the best practice, right? So the best practice to reduce your risk in the password area is to use unique for every site that you go to. And of course, typical users are not, this is overload, right? Like no one is able to do this on their own. And using a password manager tool like Keeper Password Manager allows you to easily use randomly generated passwords that are unique for every site and keep track of them. You can access your password vault from a mobile device. You can access it from a browser plugin. Super convenient, super easy to use, and literally out of the gate with a short training video, you can be very, very productive and increase your security by a large measure by using a password manager.
Yeah,
again, one of
sure.
the simpler things that you can do to reduce your risks.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, Steve. Next on the list, I think we're going to talk a little bit about endpoint detection and response. I know that there's a couple of different tools that we have for what we call EDR. You want to talk a little bit, Steve, about some of the key features of why we want to do that versus a simple antivirus?
Yeah. So I'll just give you a quick history lesson, right? So antivirus software has been around forever. Mm-hmm. And the old school antivirus software worked by having a list of all the bad stuff. And so it would constantly compare what you're doing on your computer with the list of bad stuff. And what really led to the downfall or the lower effectiveness of that type of antivirus was, number one, the list became so large that your computer would be bogged down in the process of comparing what you're doing with what's on the list and back and forth. And then you were only as good as the list, right? So if your list was even a week out of date, potentially you could still get hit with something that wasn't on the list. And so then we saw some antivirus evolve to the point where it said, all right, well, let's forget the list of what's bad. Let's just know what's good, right? And so if we know it's good, then we're going to allow it, and everything else we're going to deny. And so it was kind of a pendulum where it was like the list, no list, but the blacklist. What we've got now, the evolution, is considered endpoint detection and response. And there are several products that fit in this space, but endpoint detection and response really combines all of that with a live artificial intelligence powered network operations center or security operations center that is linked into what's happening on your machine. Mm-hmm. So something that is entirely new, that has never happened before, is able to be analyzed as suspicious or malicious and be able to be blocked in real time by this communication between what's happening on your machine and the security operations center. So it really is not necessarily the state of the art at this point. It's becoming mainstream, and a lot of insurance companies are actually requiring it as a condition of your cyber liability policy. So if you are, or they'll say endpoint detection and response, and that is a box that we need to check. And we do have excellent tools that work in that space.
Yeah, no, and many of these things are contributing towards our ability to more easily get cyber liability insurance policies renewed, and in the event of a breach, get claims reimbursed. So all this stuff matters. Steve, I think the last thing, and maybe I'm wrong, but the last thing I think we were going to talk about today is zero trust.
I lost your audio, Ken. I didn't hear the question.
Are you able to hear me now? We are having
Yes.
some technical difficulties, but I think the last thing we were going to talk about, Steve, was zero trust.
Right. So for one, zero trust is it's a big topic, but the way I like to think about it is always assume that the device that you're using is an attack. And even if you're in your office, if you're on a hotel Wi-Fi, wherever you are, assume that you're in a hostile environment. Zero trust, right? Best way to describe it. Software that will essentially help you operate in this zero trust environment. Again, a very finely tuned guardrail, again, kind of like the VSA anti-ransomware that we talked about earlier. If you take that to the next level, you have this guardrail that has a list of what's good and what's allowed, and then everything else is going to be denied. And again, if you couple that with a security operations center, real-time communications with what's happening with the security operations center, then you can detect and stop malicious activity in real time. And that's really the next level that we're talking about with zero trust. The product that we are using in this area is called ThreatLocker, and that is it is a newer product, but we do have some experience with it, and we are using it in several clients and having some great success with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, anything else that we should talk about today? Did I miss anything?
Well, I'll just summarize in that, on our team at North Star, right, we are constantly talking to other managed service providers. We're going to industry conferences. We're doing continuing education. We're certified in cybersecurity, right? And so we're always seeing these things that are happening in the industry. The threat environment is constantly changing. And really the gist of what we've talked about today is just telling you how North Star is changing the services we're offering to make sure that we are state of the art and giving you the best protection you can get at a good value price point, right? So if you approach that level of reducing your risk by 100%, which is impossible, if you reduce your risk by 99%, it is quite spendy. It becomes incrementally less spendy if you go down percentage points on that risk reduction level, right? And so what we've found, we believe, are the tools that really have good value for the level of reduction in risk that they provide for you. And so that's really what we're doing. And that's the gist of the new tools that we're offering.
No, and that is so important, and like to reiterate, Steve, something that we take very seriously and are constantly evaluating. And the threat landscape is always changing, which is why we have to keep up. Unless we have anything else, Steve, I think this will be helpful, and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we will talk soon. Bye.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Bye.